me record. So very good evening to all of you. Today the topic of discussion is anatomy of flowering plants. So a few days ago we completed the chapter that is morphology of flowering plant. So morphology describes external structure of an organism. For example, what is the shape of the body? Okay. What are the different modifications in the body? That is described by the morphology. That characters that we can see from outside without going inside. Anatomy is something I really like this presentation because in the front slide only you can see anatomy. And what best to describe? It's a cross section of a root of monocot. And you can see root, we see from outside that it is having a tap root, then fibrous root and all. But when we take a cross section of root, how cells are arranged and what are the different types of cells, how they look under microscope, that is all about anatomy of flowering plants. Okay. So we will start our lecture with definition of anatomy. Anatomy is the study of internal structure, okay, of plants and other organisms. Okay, so anatomy word can be applicable for plants, it can be applicable for animals also. So here you can see that this is cross section. I told you last time about cross section. Okay, so what is a cross section? Consider if this is a stain and you are taking a thin section out of it which will have a circular structure and you are looking it under microscope, the plant parts will look like this. Okay, so let's see what we are going to study in this anatomy of flowering plant chapter. So we will learn about the tissues. We already completed the chapter of animal tissues and now you know that depending on their position, their structure modifies also depending on their function, isn't it? What are the different types of animal tissues present in us? Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, nervous tissue. Similar way, plants also need to perform all the activities in their own way. It may be the situation that plants do not have kidneys, they do not have lungs, but they also need to go for respiration, they also need to go for excretion, circulation and all. So obviously in them, in higher plants, this tissue differentiation will be there. So let us have a look into the different types of tissues. Okay. So the plant tissues can be classified into two types. One is meristematic tissue and other one is permanent tissue. So what is the difference between meristematic tissue and permanent tissue? In case of meristematic tissue, the tissue's cells divide at their best. That means they are generally younger part of the present in the younger parts of the plants and they are ever growing. That means cells are able to go for continuous division. Permanent tissue cells in the other hand is not at all having ability to divide. They are somehow permanent. That means they lost their ability to divide. So you may have a question कि मैम फिर permanent tissue चाहिए क्यों plants को? Beta, if you look into the body of a plant and animal, in plant most of the part is dead. Can you guess why? Can you tell me why plants have dead part in most of the part? You can see big trees, isn't it? Where they have a very hard bark. We don't have such structure present in our body. So why plants need to have such dead covering around them? Class, can you tell me? As you people must be knowing that many of the plants and most of them are non-motile. So they are easily susceptible for external enemy attack. They need a hard covering around them, no, to survive. So this permanent tissue, they are there for protection. They are forming the support structure of the plant, as well as they are performing specialized functions like conduction. So you will know in more detail about permanent tissues. Different types of permanent tissues we will learn in detail. So what is tissue? Can any group of cell called tissue?
No.
No. Why? Because tissues are group of cells. They should to have common origin and function. It may be possible that in complex tissue more than one type of cells are present. But all these cells must be having common origin and common function. Okay. Now, these are two types of tissues, meristematic and permanent. We already talked about them. So we will first look into meristematic tissue. Okay. So what is this meristematic tissue? Meristematic tissues are tissues which has active cell division ability. So they are generally present in the young part of the plant where growth is continuous. So based on position, meristems can be divided into apical meristem. By this time now you know that apex means tip. So apical meristem is there, which is present in the apex region of shoot or root. Second is intercalary meristem. They are present between two permanent tissues. Consider this is the permanent tissue and this is the permanent tissue. In between two permanent tissue, there is presence of intercalary meristem. And last one, but not the least, is secondary or lateral meristem. They are responsible for increasing the girth of the plant. What do we mean by the word girth? Girth means
Breadth.
breadth. As it is a cylindrical substance, that's why we do not, it's nice if you can use the word girth, not the breadth. Okay, so let us know more about these meristems. So first we will know about the apical meristem. Okay, so root apical meristem is present in the portion which is present here. Okay, just beneath the root cap. It is present over here and it is responsible for the continuous growth of root. I told you, beta, the function of root cap is to like protect this part. Because when the root is penetrating in the soil, if this root apical meristem is damaged by some means, then root will stop its growth. The thing we can see that in root, they spread across. So for maximum increase in the surface area for absorption, that thing will not be possible if this root apical meristem is gone. And that is why it is protected with a cap that is called root cap. Okay. Is it understood, beta? I guess. So what is shoot apical meristem? As the name suggests, it is present in the shoot part. Okay, so you can see here the shoot apex where the meristematic zone is there. And many a time leaf primordium, that is the initial leaves are protecting this part so that it can be protected from harsh environment. Many a times it is observed that if there is a cow or a goat which is eating plant from the tip, the plant dies. But if it is eating parts that leaves from the lateral side of the plants, the plant survive, even though most of the leaves are gone. So the reason is if they are eating in the region and if they are destroying or eating in the apical meristematic zone, then the plant will not have any hope Why? Because apical meristem gone means whatever the harm caused to the plant cannot be recovered. Because if only permanent tissues are left, yes, beta.
मैम थोड़ी देर के लिए पॉज कर दो ना, क्योंकि हम लोग शिफ्ट हो रहे हैं दूसरे रूम में.
Okay. So the thing is that in case of apical meristem, it is present in the either shoot apex or root apex. Okay. So always remember the meristematic tissues can be divided based on many things. This type of classification is based on their position. I will let you know about what are the other types of classification of meristematic tissues. So after apical meristem, there is intercalary meristem. As I told you that intercalary meristem is always present in between two permanent tissues. That means if one permanent tissue is there, another permanent tissue is there, in between that there will be presence of intercalary meristem. Okay. So generally in case of grasses, if like apical meristem is removed by some means, the plants can still grow by using this intercalary meristem. Okay, which is not commonly present in other types of plants. So what is the role of intercalary meristem? See, plants have permanent tissue part around it, which cannot divide. But the growth cannot stop, no? That's why some amount of intercalary meristem is arranged between permanent tissue layers so that growth can continue. Okay. So what is their responsibility? What is the responsibility of this type of meristem? Apical meristem is responsible for growth of the apex and intercalary meristem is responsible for lengthening of the plant part. That means shoot का length का बढ़ना, root के length का बढ़ना, all these are responsibility of intercalary meristem. Okay, so you can see here, this is the intercalary meristem part, internode, which is the permanent tissue. Again, intercalary meristem is there, which can grow so that there will be increase in the size. Okay. Next is some more pictures. Okay. Now these apical and intercalary meristems are called primary meristems. Why? Because they are responsible for primary growth of the plants and appear in the plants during primary days of their life cycle. That's why they are called primary meristem. So during these primary days of growth, apical meristem produce dermal tissue, ground tissue, and vascular tissue. We will talk about later what do we mean by this dermal tissue, ground tissue, and vascular tissue. So last but not least, depending on position, the third type of meristem is called secondary or lateral meristem. So why they are called lateral meristem? Because beta, if you are taking cross section of a root or shoot, you will be able to find them at the lateral side of the root or shoot. And they are responsible for increase in the girth. So I am drawing it here like this, but you need to understand that if this is the stem cutting, the meristematic region will be around the central part. Understood? So it's not only present in the side, it is encircling the whole perimeter of the stem or root. Understood the location of secondary lateral meristem? So why they are called secondary? Because you must have noted that whenever we plant a sapling, the sapling first grow in height, and at that time it is green in color. When it matures, slowly and steadily the girth is increasing, and then it is becoming woody. So this part of plant growth is known as secondary growth. This lateral meristem is responsible for secondary growth of plant, and it is becoming functional at the later stage of growth of plant. That's why it is known as secondary meristem. So what are the examples? Examples are fascicular, vascular cambium, cork cambium, interfascicular cambium. Do not worry, we will learn about them and their function in the secondary growth in this chapter itself. Okay, so just want to share that this classification of meristematic tissue is only based on position of meristematic tissues, which is not enough better. If you want to appear for NEET, you need to know other classifications of meristematic tissues too. So I am going to deal with that. Kindly pay attention. I guess the screen is clearly visible to all of you. So we will talk about if we talk about meristematic tissue, okay, it can be classified based on various things. One classification we already studied, that is about based on position. So who is going to repeat for me that based on position, what are the types of meristematic tissues?
Apical,
Very good.
intercalary, and lateral.
Very good. So it is apical. Second is intercalary. And third is lateral. Okay. Now we will talk about based on origin and method of development. So if we talk like this, based on origin and method of development. So what are the types based on that? First type is known as promeristem. So what is this promeristem? In case of promeristem, the speciality of this is it is originated from embryo. You will study about the development of embryo in higher grades next year. Okay, so it is as it is originated from embryo, so it is also having other names like primordial primordial meristem, or it is also known as embryonic meristem. Okay. Now, what is the specialty? So, its location of this type of meristem is part from where organ system is generated. Okay, you know that whenever anything is present in the embryo stage, initially it is undifferentiated. What do we mean by the word undifferentiated, beta? Class, can you know the differentiation and undifferentiation? If you don't know, please let me know. I will definitely explain beta.
मैम आप रिपीट कर सकते हो?
Definitely. I asked you what is the meaning of differentiated and non-differentiated.
मैम डिफरेंशिएशन मतलब उसको स्टेम्स रूट्स और and मैम other parts.
Okay. So the thing is that if I have many types of cell, initially we all know that embryogenesis start with a cell called zygote, isn't it? And then there will be embryo. The moment zygote is a single cell and there will be formation of more than one type of cell, we call this as embryo. It is no longer a zygote. But now, here in this case, you can see that all cells are having same structure. If there are different types of cell, for example, one cell is like this, other cell is like this, other cell is hexagonal like this. Okay. So, obviously, this process is called differentiation. We all are differentiated organisms, even the higher plant, and we human beings are also differentiated. So this type of situation when cells are not differentiated, that means they are having same structure, we call them undifferentiated. Okay, so at the initial stage of embryo development in the plant, this promeristem will be there. Okay, so this promeristem will gives rise to primary meristem. What it will do? It will gives rise to, so it is present at the part where organ system is generated, where differentiation is there. What is the function of this promeristem? Promeristem is generating primary meristem. Then, does promeristem any longer exist? No, beta. They do not exist. Promeristem have very limited number of cells, so they have very limited number of cells and produce primary meristem. So if you look into a matured plant, do you think you will have promeristem present? Yes or no? In a matured plant? Class?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that in a matured plant there will be existence of promeristem?
No, ma'am.
No. Very good. So why? Because all promeristem will be converted into primary meristem. So now we will talk about the second type of meristem that is based on origin and method of development, that is called primary meristem. So primary meristem, let us know more about primary meristem. When we talk about primary meristem, they actually originate always, embryonic stage is the part, is the stage from which they originate, and they are responsible for, so they originate from promeristem at embryonic stage and help in primary growth. So whatever the permanent tissues, whatever the important parts of the plants are to be produced, it is done by primary growth. Okay, so primary body of the plant is responsible for this. So for example, let me tell you an example. If you talk about primary meristem, this primary meristem can be responsible for production of protoderm. So what is this protoderm? Protoderm means epidermal tissue system. What is the covering? What is the covering of animal body? Which type of animal tissue responsible for covering animal body, beta? Can you tell me which type of animal tissue? Very good. So the way in case of animal there is epithelial tissue, in plant is we have epidermal tissue. It's epithelial, there we call it epidermal in case of plants. So protoderm is the version of primary meristem which produce the epidermal tissue. Second type of primary meristem is procambium. So what is this procambium? Procambium is responsible for production of primary vascular elements. What are the vascular tissues of plants? Plants किससे conduct करते हैं चीजें transport करते हैं? Very good. So primary vascular elements, that is xylem and phloem, is formed by a type of primary meristem which is called procambium. Okay. And last but not least, You consider a root structure with a covering. If you take a cross section of a root, you will have covering. Obviously, we can understand that covering will be there. And then there will be patches of xylem and phloem. But do they float in air? Do you think they require some kind of support? Class? These xylem and phloems, can they float in air? Or they require some kind of tissue in which they can be suspended, which I am indicating by this blue? What do you feel, class?
Yes, ma'am.
So this tissue which is present here is called ground meristem. So this is responsible for protoderm, is responsible for covering. Procambium is responsible for production of xylem and phloem. And finally, the C type of primary meristem, that is called ground meristem or ground tissue. It is responsible to form cortex and pith. You will know more about cortex and pith later on in this chapter. Okay, so now we already discussed about two types of meristem, that is promeristem and primary meristem. Third type of meristem is also equally important, and that is known as secondary meristem. So what is the specialty of this secondary meristem? Okay. So from where this secondary meristem is produced? They are produced from permanent tissue. Okay. And what is their thing? The way primary meristem is produced from promeristem, they don't have such facility. So secondary meristem is something which does not have any godfather. It is directly originated from permanent tissue. Okay. And what is the location? The way pro-meristem is present in the embryonic stage only, where the organ system is to be generated. Primary meristem is at the actively going part of the plant. It is basically present everywhere. Secondary meristem is present wherever required. So what do we mean by this wherever required? It is confusing. कैसे पता चलेगा कहाँ required है? For example, they can be present as vascular cambium. They can be present at cord cambium. Okay, so their main role is secondary growth. So their main role is secondary growth, and they can be subdivided as vascular cambium. As the name suggests, it is responsible for development of secondary vascular tissue, that is secondary xylem and secondary phloem. And second is cord cambium. Cord cambium is a part which is responsible for formation of bark. ओके, ये जो बार्क हम देखते हैं दैट इज एक्चुअली द थिंग. ओके, so is this classification clear to all of you beta? Take some time, look into it. If you have, take some time, look into this classification and let me know if you have any doubt. We can definitely discuss. So now what we are going to discuss today, now we are going to more clarify the difference between primary and secondary meristem. We will see the difference between primary and secondary meristem. Okay, so can you people suggest any difference? At least one.
Ma'am, primary meristem is for primary growth.
Okay, that though we will come. I'm talking about the origin first. So first point that we will write is originates from promeristem, isn't it? And if I'm talking about secondary meristem, originates from permanent tissues due to dedifferentiation. What is this strange word dedifferentiation? So at one side we will once again discuss about this differentiation, dedifferentiation and all. Actually this chapter is deleted by CBSE, but I'm going to anyways teach because it is present in the board. So as we discussed earlier also, there is zygote and there will be formation of initial stage of embryo where all cells are
मैम
having same structure. Yes, beta.
मैम प्रीवियस स्लाइड करो ना.
It's not over yet.
ओके मैम.
So once from this embryo, there is further differentiation where some group of cells are like this. Some group of cells are like this. Some group of cells develop into this type of structure. This whole process is called differentiation. So process is called differentiation and this tissue is called differentiated. And we call this undifferentiated. I am repeating once again for confirmation of that whatever I am saying is registered in your mind or not. Now, plants are having a unique property which is called totipotency. Have you ever heard about this word again?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is this totipotency? Can you tell me?
मैम प्लांट्स में ऐसी एबिलिटी होती है कि मैम वो किसी एक टाइप की सेल से बाकी के सेल्स बना सकते
Very good, very good. So one type of cell can produce all types of cells present in plant. That means if I take, consider, if I take a cell from the leaf, from that cell I can produce root, I can produce leaf, I can produce a shoot, I can produce a flower, and even if I wish, I can produce a fruit too. So don't you think this is something great? Yes or no? This ability of plants make them unique, and that is why, in spite of being a very complicated organism, they can be reproducing via methods called cutting, grafting, layering. You studied about different methods of reproduction in plants in grade 10. Cutting, grafting, layering. Class, I know you've studied. So can you do this?
Yes, ma'am.
ऐसा possible है मेरे हाथ का या मेरे finger का टुकड़ा कहीं रख दे and giving it proper medium, food and everything, and it will produce a second Dr. Ananya Das. Nice, na? It could have been really nice, but it's not possible, beta, because we are unipotent. So this is the unique case present in case of plants. In case of animal, we are unipotent. Unipotent matlab one type of cell can produce that type of cell only. Understood? It cannot produce any other type of cell. It can produce only that specific type of cell. For example, if I take squamous epithelium, it can produce cells of squamous epithelium only. Okay, we have a multipotent cell. We also have a multipotent cell, which is called stem cell. We talked about it in animal tissue, isn't it? So stem cell can produce RBC, it can produce WBC, and it can produce platelets. That's why in case of plants, this differentiation is possible as well, as there is a procedure possible which is called de-differentiation. So what is de-differentiation? That means differentiated tissue, if again become undifferentiated, we call the process as Dedifferentiation. Understood, class?
Yes, ma'am.
So, let me tell you the funny thing. Again, they can be differentiated, and then the process is called redifferentiation. मतलब वो पहले undifferentiated था at embryo stage, फिर differentiated हुआ via differentiation process, वापस से dedifferentiated होके undifferentiated हुआ, वापस से जब वो differentiated होता है, then we call it redifferentiation, not differentiation. Understood, class?
Yes, ma'am.
One person. So, with this, we will again come back to the definition that we were tackling with the difference between primary and secondary meristem. So, cells are generally round, oval, polygonal, and rectangular. They do not have okay. Whereas in case of secondary meristem, cells are elongated, and possess central vacuole. So what is the central vacuole? That means at the center of the cell there is a presence of big vacuole. Okay, let us look into the third difference. So in case of primary meristem, it gives rise to primary permanent tissue. Okay, of so these primary body parts of the plants are developed at the initial stage of their life cycle. Okay, but let me tell you, here there is one exception, and this exception of primary meristem is interfascicular cambium. So we will learn later in this chapter what do we mean by interfascicular cambium. Okay. Now, what is the role of this? Gives rise to secondary, or we can call it supplement tissue. You know, nowadays we people take lots of food supplement. Have you ever heard about this food supplement class?
Yes, ma'am.
Food supplement किसे बोलते हैं? Have you ever heard about this word? Food supplement.
Yes.
क्या होता है food supplement?
External source and complete the deficiency in our body.
So ideally, all of us should have a balanced diet with perfect requirement of carbohydrate, protein, fat, minerals, vitamins, and water. But many a times, the food we are eating, we are not able to measure every time, no? If it is having a correct amount of food nutrients, or if it is having all the required nutrients. Let's forget about amount. So what we do? Is it possible for us to always measure and eat? No. So then what is the shortcut? We are using vitamin tablets, mineral tablets. Some people is having vitamin B12 deficiency. They are taking that. Some people take protein powder. These are called food supplements. वैसे ही प्लांट के ग्रोथ में जो मेन परमानेंट टिश्यू वाला पार्ट होता है, that is done by primary permanent tissue. Whereas secondary or supplement tissue कौन बनाता है? By the secondary meristem. It is the supplement. Okay. So that's all about the differences. Now we will talk about a few theories of formation of meristematic tissues, and let me tell you. So what is structural organization of apical meristem? Obviously, apical meristem can be present at the tip of shoot and root. So first we will talk about the shoot apex. So it is present at the shoot tip. Okay. So shoot apex present at the tip of shoot. Some books it may be mentioned as a plumule. So embryo part from which the shoot is produced is called plumule. Okay. So what is the structure of this? So location of this shoot apical meristem is beneath primordial leaf. So the first leaf produced, they are called primordial leaf. Just beneath that. So if you look into this structure, if these are primordial leaf, if this is primordial leaf, okay, this part is known as shoot apical meristem. Okay, So the question is, what is the shape of these cells? It is generally cone shaped. So the shape is cone with a convex apex. Okay. And depending on plants, its size and shape may vary also. So there are various theories to describe about the structural organization of apical meristematic tissue, that is shoot apex. First theory is called histogen theory. So why they require theories? Theory will tell you how they look and how they are organizing themselves. Okay, so this theory was proposed by Hanstein in the year 1870. Okay, so what he did, so according to him, shoot apical meristem have three distinct layers. Okay, these distinct layers are called histogen, and that is why this theory is known as histogen theory. So what are these three distinct layers? First layer is known as dermatogen. Okay, so what is dermatogen? Dermatogen forms outer covering of
मैम
yes बेटा हाँ बोलो
सॉरी मैम गलती से माइक बंद हो गया
I cannot exactly hear you. So I request everyone to mute their sound, and one person can like unmute themselves and speak. Others can minimize their sound in other phones. Then this problem will not occur. Yes, beta. Try. So apart from dermatogen, the next part that is there is called peribleum. So peribleum is responsible for production of cortex and endodermis. And last but not least is sclerome. Plerome forms the central core of the plant, that is, it forms the pith and primary vascular tissue. So if I create a structure, I will draw and show you presence of these parts in plant body. The pink layer I am drawing will be called dermatogen. Okay. Then if I consider there will be cells at the center, which is responsible for conduction. This will be formed by using plerome, and the ground tissue will be formed by periphery. So that is all. Today we will learn up to this only. In our next lecture, we will learn about the other theory related to shoot apex, and that is called tunica corpus theory. Okay. So I guess you don't have any doubt. If you have doubt, ask me in the next lecture. Okay. So bye to all of you.